thousands of years. Nearly everything people wore came directly from nature. Then, over the last century, everything changed. You're paying $100 for a pair of leggings that's recycled plastic trash. So many people have never stopped to wonder whether replacing natural fibers with plastics might have consequences that we don't fully understand. The fertility crisis that is going on right now, I think, is a mixture of a lot of different factors. No one is really looking at the clothing factor like we should be. Hello, and welcome back to the Gubba Homestead podcast. I'm Gubba, a first-time homesteader following in the footsteps of my homesteading forebears. Here, I talk about everything from homesteading to prepping and everything in between. Today, we're talking about the clothes we wear every single day and why I've started paying closer attention to the fibers that my clothes are made from. I feel like this is an important discussion, but before we get into that, I want to thank the sponsor of today's podcast, which is my small skincare business, Arvati. It all started with how I made a simple tallow balm for my dad who was struggling with eczema, and what began as one homemade balm has now grown into a full line of small batch made skincare. And today I get to help thousands of people simplify their skincare routines with ingredients they can actually recognize and trust. If you've been looking to upgrade your skincare routine, you can check out my handcrafted tallow balms, my cleansing oils, my facial serums, my goat milk soaps, and more at arvati.com. Now, let's get into the episode. Have you ever stopped to think about what your clothes are actually made of? I don't mean, like the color or the style, but like the fibers themselves. So if someone asked you what shirt you're wearing right now, you could probably tell them the brand or that it's blue or striped or that it's your favorite shirt. But if they asked whether it was cotton, linen, polyester, rayon, or a blend of different materials, would you know exactly what you're wearing? I don't think most people would. And I find that interesting because clothing is something we wear almost, 24 hours a day. And it's one of the few things that is in constant contact with our skin. Yet most of us spend more time reading the ingredients on a cereal box than we do reading the tag sewn into our clothes. And if you think about that, it's great that we're reading the ingredients in our food, what goes into our bodies, but we should also be paying attention to the ingredients on what covers and is touching our body all day long. What's fascinating is that for thousands of years, this wasn't even a question that people had to ask because nearly everything people wore came directly from nature. So you had linen that came from flax, cotton coming from the cotton plants, and wool came directly from sheep that people raised. People just simply wore what came from the land. Then over the last century, like most things, everything changed. You had synthetic fibers like polyester, spandex, and acrylic that entered the market. And today, they make up a huge percentage of the clothing hanging in our closets or at the store. Like, it's the norm that so many people have never stopped to wonder whether replacing natural fibers with plastics might have consequences that we don't fully understand. And I want to pause here for a second because this is a repeated pattern. As you listen to my podcast, I talk about these patterns. The last 100 years, something that has been around for thousands of years finally changed, It kind of ties into, was there a reset? But if you think about our food system, it was a certain way for thousands of years, eating these natural foods, raw milk, whatever else, and then it completely pivoted 100 years ago. The way we were getting food from our gardens changed 100 years ago with the emergence of grocery stores. So our clothing changed around 100 years ago, and now most people are wearing plastic. Like, plastic is what makes up our closets. That's, in my opinion, pretty insane. And one of the reasons I've been paying more attention to this is because our skin isn't just something that covers our bodies, right? It's our largest organ. It regulates temperature, protects us from the outside world. It's our barrier, and it's in constant contact with whatever we choose to wear. So we spend hours sleeping in pajamas or exercising in workout clothes. That's a big one. Sitting in office chairs, wrapping ourselves in blankets, and dressing our children in fabrics that they may wear all day long. So when something is touching your skin for 12, 16, sometimes, 24 hours every single day, I think it's reasonable to say that the material matters, and we've forgotten why. And one of the biggest differences between natural and synthetic fibers is how they behave. So you have linen and cotton, which are known for being breathable. They are so comfortable because they allow air to circulate. That's huge, absorb moisture, and help your body regulate temperature. So that's one reason linen has been worn in hot climates for thousands of years. And wool, surprisingly, can also regulate temperature incredibly well. It keeps you warm when it's cold, but also helps move away moisture from your skin. Synthetic materials, on the other hand, are often designed for durability, stretch, and wrinkle resistance, but many of them trap heat and moisture differently than natural fibers. So anyone who's ever worn a polyester shirt on a hot day probably knows exactly what I'm talking about. And I have to say, the past few summers, I've transitioned to linen. I actually even wear linen in the winter. I find that it's still insulating, but allows air to circulate. But linen, oh, it is so nice. Even my longer sleeve linen shirts out in the sun, but also wool. I sleep on sheepskin even right now in the summer. You may think that's crazy. It might be hot, but actually it helps regulate your temperature with that airflow. It's so comfortable too and just feels good. That was something when I started looking into clothes and what we have on our skin every single day. I also thought, well, what am I sleeping in? Most of the sheets on our bed are also like the polyester, the bottom line plastic, like literally plastic that they turn into for a quick buck. This isn't for your benefit. This isn't for saving the planet, by the way, to sell back to you this recycled plastic garbage, and then you sleep in it. That's insane. So if you're listening, one of my biggest suggestions, if you're going to start on this journey of changing out what touches your skin, change to linen sheets and thank me later. They are so nice in the winter and the summer. And then eventually you can bring in sheepskins like I have. Oh, I love just curling up in a sheepskin at night, but just being more thoughtful of what goes onto your skin and what you sleep in. And as I started digging into this topic, I found some interesting research that gave me a different lens to look at it. So there was one study involving female dogs that found that those wearing polyester garments for extended periods of time had lower progesterone levels and reduced fertility compared to dogs wearing cotton or wool garments. And fertility returned after the polyester garments were removed. And I think that is so worth paying attention to. What is really going on with the infertility crisis that is sweeping across the population right now? I don't know about you, but I can think just off the top of my head, a handful of people, more than a handful of, men and women in my life that I know or someone knows in my circle that I've interacted with that is struggling with infertility. There's something going on, and I feel like I've discussed this with ingredients, not only in our food that we're eating, but ingredients that we're putting on our skin. And when you dive into the research, you find that these ingredients are mimicking hormones, causing our hormone systems to go out of whack. And then you find research about what you wear. Of course, this was on dogs, right? So it's on dogs. We can't go crazy. But the dogs that were wearing polyester garments had infertility issues. Yeah, I'm sure that's just for dogs. So then think about this. Nobody's really questioning what we're wearing, right? And then take that a step further. I mean, this used to be me. I used to have the black spandex, tight leggings, that I got from somewhere, and then you go and work out. Oh, and the spandex, like it's like the silky polyester, workout top that you go and work out in, and then you're sweating, your glands are open, and then you have this polyester recycled plastic that's then interacting with your lymph system, your blood, your circulation. Does that seem like good news to you? I mean, look what happened to the dogs. I think it is absolutely worth paying attention to. And the infertility or the fertility crisis that is going on right now, I think is a mixture of a lot of different factors. And no one is really looking at the clothing factor like we should be. And there are studies looking at male fertility that remind us that something as simple as temperature matters. We already know that prolonged heat around the testes can negatively affect sperm production. So that's why there are discussions around things like hot tubs and saunas and even tight fitting clothing in relation to male fertility. So breathable fabrics like linen may, in theory, help reduce heat buildup compared to some synthetic materials. Again, clothing is only one small piece of the puzzle. And the point isn't to claim that one polyester shirt causes infertility. It's just to recognize that what surrounds our bodies every single day deserves more attention than we're giving it. And I feel like we have been so blinded by these brands that for some reason get so popular. But when you look at the tag, they're just recycled plastic trash, but you're paying $100 for a pair of leggings that's recycled plastic trash. But that's the cool thing. You go to school. I can only imagine the pressure, especially on like teenage girls who got to wear the cool brands and have no idea what it is doing to their hormone regulation. And then there's a whole nother question that I think deserves discussion. And that's not just the fibers themselves, but treatments applied to the fibers. So many modern textiles are treated with stain-resistant coatings, wrinkle-resistant finishes, the water repellents, the antimicrobial treatments, flame retardants, or synthetic dyes. So not every garment contains all these, and the regulations vary, right? Depending on where clothing is made. But it's another reminder that clothing today involves much more than just the fabric listed on the tag. Personally, I find myself asking a simple question. If I have the option to wear something closer to its natural state, why wouldn't I? Because it is not disclosed how much of those toxic chemicals are applied to the clothing. So not only are you getting the plastic recycled trash, you're also getting the extra chemicals, especially the flame retardants. Those are incredibly toxic that are just, how are they interacting on my skin? How are they absorbing into my skin? What are they then doing to my body? Those are some interesting things to think about. Again, this is new stuff that has emerged in the past 100 years. So now over time, as we're starting to see these health issues arise, we're now starting to look and try to figure it out. Could it be the secondhand exposure to flame retardants in the clothing we're wearing? It's something to question. One thing I love about linen is that it actually gets softer too the more you wear it. I love linen. It doesn't ask you to baby it. And I feel like it develops character over time instead of just wearing out after a few seasons. Then you just toss it away. And cotton has also remained popular for centuries because it's comfortable and versatile. Then you have wool, which has been trusted for thousands of years in the harshest of climates too, because it's incredibly insulating. And these fibers, they've all stood the test of time, not because they were trending or had the biggest brand name, but because generation after generation found them practical. And I don't think anyone needs to leave this episode and throw their entire wardrobe away. I understand that's not realistic. And honestly, it isn't how most meaningful changes happen anyway. The same way I didn't replace everything in my kitchen overnight, I wouldn't expect anyone to replace every piece of clothing at once. That's overwhelming. But maybe the next time you need a new t-shirt, you look for one made from 100% cotton. Maybe your next summer outfit is linen. Maybe you choose wool socks or you get a wool blanket. It's these small decisions that are repeated over time that have a bigger impact than the dramatic throw everything out and you're acting in fear. At the end of the day, this episode is just about becoming curious again. We live in a world where convenience has replaced tradition without us ever stopping to ask why. And sometimes those changes are improvements, but sometimes they're just not improvements. And in my opinion, I feel like the way where we took clothes with our material was not an improvement. And after all, if we already think carefully about the food we eat, the water we drink, and the products we put on our skin, you should give our body a try. Maybe it's time we start paying a little more attention to the clothes that wrap us up every single day, and then pay attention to how we feel. I feel so much better when I'm outside in a linen shirt as compared to a polyester or rayon or acrylic, whatever. I can feel the difference and I feel like moisture whisks away from me way easier. And I feel better. I feel more in tune, more grounded with the environment. And maybe that has something to play with how different fabrics are said to have different frequencies, but they don't want you to know that. Anyways, I hope that you enjoyed this episode and you learn to start reading the tags on the clothing that you are wearing, just like you read the ingredients on the food you're eating. And I hope you found this interesting and inspiring. And I hope that you have an amazing day. Again, thank you so much for spending your time with me, and I'll see you next time.